Hi, my name's Ed Nolan and I'm a psychology teacher at Queen Elizabeth Sixth Form College. And in this film we're going to look at how correlational research is used as a tool in psychology. Now let's take a look at this picture. This represents how most psychological research is done. You're saying, well, it all looks a bit fruity to me. So what we have here is two quite separate fruits, an apple and an orange. We know they're very different. And so in psychological research, what we do is we usually take two categories or two conditions that are very different. And we look at how the difference between those categories or conditions has an effect on something else. So for instance, we may look to see what the difference is between taste in an orange and an apple, or colour. And so what we have there is what's called an independent variable, our two different fruits. And the thing we're measuring, taste or colour, is our dependent variable. And most research is done like this through experimentation. However, in psychology, we may have to take a different approach sometimes. So instead of looking at two separate groups, what we do is we look at two separate variables, and not how different they are, but how they relate. So what we do is we may measure one variable, we'll call it a covariable, and see if that goes up or down. And then we will measure another variable, we'll call that a covariable too, and we will see if that will go up with it. That's a positive correlation. Or whether that decreases when our first covariable goes up. And that's called a negative correlation. An example of this in psychology is a piece of research done by James Bennett and Teresa Martu. They were Australian psychologists who were interested in our fear of animals, and they believed that we weren't born to be scared of certain animals, but we were born to be scared of characteristics of animals. So what they did is they did a piece of research where they presented 20 animals to their participants, and they got them to rate them on different characteristics out of 5, 1 being the lowest, to 5 being the highest experience characteristic. So a number of different characteristics, one of them being how much fear we felt when we saw the animal and how ugly the animal was. So if we have a look here, we have a vole, and he's rather cute and fluffy and he's got a black brie and everything. And so when I look at ugliness, I think, no, not at all. I'm going to give him 1 for ugliness because he's fluffy and nice. And then I start thinking, well, fear. Oh, well, no, I'm not really scared of him. I might give him a 2 for fear. However, when I look at this picture, I'm like, oh, it's all hairy and eyes and legs. And yes, that really is an ugly thing. So I might give that spider a 4 for ugliness. And then suddenly when I think, well, how fearful? Yes, I am fearful of that animal. I am particularly scared of little spiders. I might give it a 3 or a 4 for my fear. Well, what they found by rating 20 animals across all their participants is a positive correlation. They found that as people's rating of the ugliness went up, so did their rating of fear. So they found a relationship between those two factors. So let's have a look at the main features of correlational research in psychology. First of all, correlations involve measuring 2 covariables. Not 1 dependent variable, but 2 covariables or more. It doesn't involve 2 separate groups, so there's no independent variable, and we're not looking at differences. They can be quite quick to do and fairly straightforward, so we can collect large amounts of data fairly quickly. When we get our correlation, we can identify whether it's positive, that is that when 1 variable rises, so does another. Negative, that means when 1 variable rises, the other decreases, or whether there is no correlation at all. And we label those in different strengths: weak, moderate, or strong. If we have a weak correlation, then we really are looking and saying, well, we're not going to pursue this any further. We don't think there's anything going on. But Bennett, Levy and Martu found a strong correlation between their fear of the animal and how ugliness they were. So it does seem to suggest that there is something happening there that can be investigated. We represent our correlations using scatter diagrams. Now in a scatter diagram, we label the x-axis as one of the variables that we measure and the y-axis as the other variable we're measuring. And by doing that, we can then build up and see if there's a relationship. So as you can see on the left hand there is a positive relationship. As one rises, so does the other. There's a negative in the middle, and we can't really see any correlation. So Bennett, Levy and Marteau would find a positive correlation, the one on the left. Let's look at this idea of positive and negative again. If I was to have a zoo and I was to get more monkeys in my zoo and I ended up having to buy more bananas, I would say that I have a positive relationship. However, I can't say that more monkeys makes me or causes more bananas to be bought, because I might just have one greedy monkey amongst them. Likewise, if we take temperature, as it gets hotter and hotter, and as temperature rises, the value of temperature rises, suddenly people wear less items of clothing. What I would say is I have a negative relationship. One increases, the other one decreases. So what have we learned today? First of all, we've learned that correlations measure two covariables. They don't measure differences, but they measure relationships. That they can be used on large amounts of data quite quickly and are used usually to precede further more in-depth research. That we can get a negative or positive correlation. That we label them as being weak, moderate and strong, and researchers are really looking for strong correlations, and that we can represent those in a scatter diagram. Well done, you've made it through correlations.